Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today in the second of our limited webinar series, Forging Resilience in Chaos. The response that we've had to this series so far is honestly just absolutely mind-blowing. It's come to our attention that we've actually missed a lot of really key, critical, and important questions in the chat as it's flown by. So today we encourage you to use the Q&A feature. That'll allow us to do a much better job of identifying your needs and your questions and reaching out to you directly to help answer those. So again, please, we encourage you to use the Q&A feature on this webinar. We're so glad to see all of you here. I see there are a lot of people watching these live. It just is spectacular. I know there are people from all corners of the world. Some of you are awake in the middle of the night so you can watch the broadcast live. Some of you have teams joining remotely, all coming together. Some of you are going to be here for a bit and need to hop in and out while you're taking care of your kids who are probably climbing all over and running in and out of the room right now. And really appreciate everybody taking a minute to come be with us today, to be with each other and help just discuss this really important topic. I don't know, this experience has just been so great, and I really appreciated the opportunity. As a reminder, this session is being recorded today. If you've registered, you will receive a follow-up email to sometime later this evening that will have a link to this presentation. It will be right on the top of that email. So if you got one yesterday, you'll see yesterday's presentation right there at the top, and you'll get another one today, as well as details on the next webinar we have coming up, which will be on Wednesday. That will be with the incomparable Chip Huth, and I encourage you guys to tune in for that as well. We are also concurrently broadcasting this on YouTube, so if you run into any technical difficulties, please go ahead and hop over to that platform where it might be a little easier for you to participate. Following each of these webinars, I've had the very cool opportunity to talk with each of the presenters and to take some of your most just deep questions that we can't possibly dig into in a webinar format. And we have a conversation and we record that Q&A. And those Q&A sessions are then put on our website separate from the webinars. So they're actually two separate recordings. And if you go to arbinger.com/webinars, you'll be able to request access to those recordings there. This one will be up as soon as it's ready. You can also access our previous webinar Q&A sessions. It's really nice to have an opportunity to address your questions in a format that's really more conducive to those deep conversations. Today, it is my great honor to introduce our session, Chaos to Calm, Developing an Organizational Change Plan, and our presenter, Mitch Warner. Mitch is the co-author of the best-selling book, The Outward Mindset, and managing partner of the Arbinger Institute. He's an accomplished speaker and an amazing leader. I should throw that in as well. His clients include Citrix and Aflac and NASA and the US Army and Air Force. Mitch is also a truly outward person, and just as an interesting note, he's also an incredibly talented artist. Some of you joining us today have had the opportunity to work with Mitch or go to one of his presentations before, so I know you guys have already settled in for an engaging presentation with a lot of practical application. If you have not, welcome. You might want to grab a pen and a piece of paper. And now, with no further ado, Mitch Warner.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you so much. And thanks for joining us today. I'm aware that this is precious time for you to be taking time away from your work. Sarah mentioned some of you might be in a completely different time zone. Thanks for joining us today. I want to talk today about how to build an organizational change plan and how to do that with an outward mindset. I know many of you are leaders and you're looking at, what do I do right now in order to adjust, to pivot strategically in terms of how we organize ourselves, how we work together in order to adjust to the changing environment that we find all around us. Before we dive in, I want to look at some of the strategic pivots that you might need to be making right now in your organization. One might be what you deliver, just your product strategy. What is it that we deliver, and is it relevant? It might have been relevant 3 weeks ago. That may have changed. We see that there's parts of the economy where what is being delivered is critical right now. And each of us have to look at our organization and say, is what we deliver critical? And how could we pivot? How could we adjust? How could we make How could we make changes and innovations that would enable what we deliver to meet the need that we're seeing right now? Or you might have a pivot you have to make in your go-to-market strategy. Maybe what we deliver is right on point. It's what our customers need, but how we deliver it has changed. The logistical challenges in moving product, in finding ways to get with our customers has changed dramatically. Maybe we need to rethink that radically right now. It might be that your cultural requirements need to change. The way that you work, the way that you operated in the past was okay for the status quo in a stable market, but it may not be okay today. It might be that you need to rethink the kind of work ethic that's required right now. People are putting in long hours, they're putting in time. And what was the expectation in the past? What is your expectation right now? Does that have to change? Does there have to be a mindset shift required in terms of what is required in terms of the level of effort and dedication that we're putting in, the level of helpfulness, how we interact with each other, how we think about our own job, our own role, and the innovation and the creativity that we're bringing to that. The days of just, showing up and doing what I've been assigned, the tasks and activities that are part of my job description, those days are gone. Have we enabled a shift, a cultural shift? Remember, I was with a large multinational client about 3 years ago, and we were talking about the work ethic, that was required in their organization to deliver what they had to deliver. Thousands, tens of thousands of employees. And they asked me, they said, "What's the work ethic required at Arbinger?" And I said, "Well, to be honest, from a scale of 0 to 10, we expect a 9 or a 10 at all times. That's what's required at Arbinger." I said, "Well, what about you?" And they said, "It's kind of maybe a 5 or a 6. That's changed. I guarantee you that within that organization, something new is required. And if they had been operating with the expectation, the requirement that you can be a 5 or a 6 in terms of work ethic, then how do they make that shift, that cultural shift? The remote working and logistical challenges that come with just having a dispersed workforce, not being able to see each other in the day-to-day of our work, not being able to coordinate quickly, office to office, but now having to think through meetings and who's invited and how we schedule those in such a way that our meetings aren't consuming all of our time, that we can still have time to get our work done, but do it in a coordinated way. What are the logistical challenge of just making sure that we set that up in the right way? Scaling up or resizing down? My guess is that almost every organization on this call represented is either in one of those two modes. Either you're panicked to figure out how we're going to grow the workforce in order to enable us to sustain the kind of demand that we're seeing, or you've got to think about how to right-size the business, how to bring your workforce down to a level that you can weather the challenges right now and transform the business at the same time. How do you do that? How do you do that with an outward mindset? What's your organizational change plan? And then, of course, there are other adjustments in terms of role clarity and flexibility. It might be that with all of these changes, especially if you've been scaling up or resizing down, now I might be handling a number of roles that used to be handled by multiple people. They're now all with me. How do I get role clarity on that? How do I know who to report to and how? Or you might have the challenge of, now I've got my roles, our landscape is dramatically different than it was 3 weeks ago. And now I might have the issue of, well, I've got these roles, but how do we flex? I've got other capabilities, other talents that might be needed right now, but do I have the flexibility to move into those roles? And how do we communicate that? Just a number of challenges that you have to think through if you're going to build an organizational change plan. I want to just do a quick poll right now and get a sense of all the participants here on the webinar. Which one of these is standing out to you most as the current need right now? Let's just put up that poll and get a sense of where our participants are at, whether it's a shift in product strategy, a go-to-market strategy, the cultural requirements that are needed now that are different, the remote working and logistical challenges of managing a dispersed workforce, scaling up or resizing down, or other role clarity and adjustments. It's interesting, as these are coming in, we're seeing about 31% around remote working and logistical challenges. Just how do we run a business when it looks like this? And another 25% are looking at role clarity and making sure that there's clarity and flexibility. Really, really interesting. Let's end that poll and post those results to the whole group so you can see where people are falling out on that. Remote working and adjustments. We've also got a number of you that are thinking about just cultural requirements to adjust in this current market. Great. Okay, well, we're gonna think about all of those, and wherever you came out on that poll, I want you to be thinking about the specific change that you're trying to affect right now. And before I give you a plan to think about that, I want to go through what tools we have at Arbinger that can help you provide a framework to think through that. Now, many of you might be familiar with Arbinger's influence pyramid, and we usually think about the pyramid in terms of affecting individual change. When there's a person or a team that might need to change in some way, how we bring to bear outward influence. And I want to just walk through the pyramid from that lens for anyone who's not familiar with Arbinger's tools. If you are, bear with me, and then we're going to take this tool and we're going to apply it to your organizational challenges right now to help you build out a game plan. This pyramid helps us understand that when we need to correct anything, whether that's a person or a plan, that's the very smallest part of the pyramid. It's the very top. And in order for that to go well, whether we're dealing with someone who's creating challenges or we're rethinking a plan, we have to think through what forms the foundation of effective correction, which is teaching and communicating. If I'm having a challenge with another person, what do they need to know? What do they need to understand? What do they need to be trained in or educated about in order to do what I'm now asking them to do that's different than I was asking them to do before? Now, teaching and communicating is only effective insofar that the foundation for that teaching and communication has been built, which is listening and learning. What do I need to know that I don't know right now that would inform how I teach, how I communicate, how I train and educate? What do I need to know about a person's circumstances and challenges, the various situations, even their learning style that would help me teach and communicate more effectively? Now, people will only share with me what I need to know in order to teach and communicate effectively and correct effectively if they trust me, if we have the right relationship. And that's the next level down. That's the foundation for all listening and learning, is the relationship that we have with those that we're trying to correct. And even more foundational to building the relationship is the relationship that I have with all those who have influence with that individual, all the other stakeholders in this situation. Now, as you'll remember, if you're familiar with this pyramid, everything we've outlined here are a series of behaviors that form foundations to each next successive behavior, but which are all behaviors nevertheless that we can engage in one of two ways. We can either engage in these behaviors seeing other people as people that matter, that count the way we count, or we can engage in these behaviors not seeing people as people. And so the bottom of the pyramid is the most foundational level that informs everything above it. How do I see? What is my mindset? Am I outward in the way I see those that are involved in this entire process? Now, if you're familiar with Arbinger's tools, you'll also be familiar with these three lessons that are key to implementing this pyramid in any situation. Number one, work bottom up. Most time and attention should be spent at the lower levels of the pyramid. It's formed as a pyramid for a reason. It tells us where we should be spending commensurately more and more of our time at these lower levels. And you'll notice that it's only the top of the level that's dealing with things that go wrong. Everything below that is, how do I help things go right now in this situation with these people? And everything below that top level is about changing things about me, how I'm approaching it, how I'm seeing it, what I'm doing to help things go right. Number two, if I'm stuck at any level of the pyramid, the solution is always at a lower level. If I'm stuck at teaching and communicating and that's not going well, what do I have to look at below that level? And number three, ultimately, my mindset matters most. My effectiveness at any level is a function of that lowest level. Well, okay, now let's think about an inward mindset and an outward mindset. In Calm, you look at how we were operating 3 weeks ago. It was easier, in my experience and in the experience of all those we're hearing from who are participating on this webinar, to be calm when we're existing in the status quo. It's easier to be outward. It's easier to see people and systematically think through the pyramid when the world isn't blowing up. But when everything has changed, when we move from calm to chaos, something happens to this pyramid, to the way we allocate our time, to the way we think about what's going to be most effective. It turns that pyramid upside down. And we spend lots of time correcting all the things that are going wrong, all the things that we've got to address right now, and commensurately less and less time at the lower level. Some time in teach and communicate, but you'll notice if we're inward, when we teach and communicate, it just feels like correction. It doesn't feel like education. We might spend some time in listening and learning, but just learning what we need to know in order to get back to correction, and very little time building the relationship. Well, I want to just share with you right here an example that will set up what we need to think through today in order to build an organizational game plan. I want to go back one slide so that you can have this front and center. Thinking about what the inward mindset does to the pyramid when we're in chaos. When I was 24 years old, I took the lead seat within a nursing home facility. It's the first time I had been ever in that chair all by myself. And it was a facility that was essentially in crisis, both financially and clinically. And there are a number of clinical indicators that we look at within a healthcare setting when we're helping the elderly or the infirm that give us a sense about how we're performing clinically. And one of those is the number of falls, the number of times in a given month that patients across the entire facility experience a fall. And if you've worked with the elderly or the infirm, you know that a fall can be fatal. That's a major challenge to delivering clinical care, quality clinical care. Well, I came into this facility and immediately saw that there was a massive problem. We were having, on average, 30 falls a month. And I was panicked. That creates huge liability, not to mention the challenge in providing care for those who are putting their lives in our hands. Just a quick shout out to all of you who are doing that right now, who are in nursing homes, who are in hospitals providing that care. Thank you so much for all the work that you're doing. I know what that looks like, what that means, especially in chaos. Well, in that moment, my initial instinct was to move to correct. I'm not a clinician, but I felt the responsibility to turn this around. I felt what it meant if we couldn't turn this around. And so I started to look at all of the processes that we had in place, all the protocols, and I doubled them, I changed them, and then I started in-servicing like crazy. On every shift, I was there around the clock, making sure that everybody was in-serviced. And then we in-serviced, we trained, we taught and communicated at the beginning of every single shift every day. And I felt like that was one piece that was missing, was our plan. But I also felt that the other thing that was missing was deep accountability on the part of our nurse managers who were managing the staff at any given time in a day. And so I instituted what I thought was really helpful in order to drive a new level of accountability. I said, if a patient falls at on your shift at any time, day or night, at 12 in the afternoon or at 3 in the morning, I want a call and the clinical director wants a call. I thought that if we just simply did that, that we would, I thought we would instill enough fear that people would change. Well, I think you can probably guess what happened. Nothing happened. Falls remained at 30 or plus or more a month. And then something really, really important happened. There was one particular nurse manager that I saw when I looked at the tracking had more falls on her shift than any other nurse manager. On a particular day, I was out of the building and I got a call from our clinical director who said, there's been another fall by this particular patient who had fallen multiple times before. I said, who is the nurse manager? Clinical director told me, and I said, have her stay in my office and we need to terminate her employment. I drove 4 hours back to the facility. I sat down with this nurse manager and I said, I'm so sorry. Now, I wasn't sorry. I felt that that would send a message that would be clear enough to every other nurse manager that we needed to have a change and that somehow would affect the change we needed to see in this crisis, in this chaos. She stopped me and she said, I understand, but Mitch, I think I could fix this. I think I know what's broken. I think I know why patients are falling. She said, would there be any chance that you would let me fix this? And I said, okay, go for it. And she did it. She fixed it. She got a number of the nurse managers around that she knew. She got the CNAs who are working with the patients moment to moment, providing all of their daily care. And they figured out exactly what they should do. They put the protocols into place and they trained all of those who were involved. I didn't do any of it, which makes sense because I'm not with the patients. I'm not a clinician. They owned it. And then they said, you know what? We have key stakeholders here. We have all the other patients in this building who can help us educate and inform and alert us when things are going wrong. We went from 30 to 4 falls in a month. I didn't know it at the time, but we were following a particular organizational change plan, despite the leadership that I thought I was providing, and because of this remarkable nurse manager. If you think about the pyramid, and if you're familiar with this framework, I want you to think about it in a new, completely expanded way. To think about the pyramid as the way you create a remarkably effective organizational change plan. Think about the top of the pyramid and ask yourself, what do we need to correct or change as an organization right now? That's the top of the pyramid in order to get the results we need. Is it the cultural expectations? Is it the role clarity? Is it to change the way that we're thinking about and working on how we work remotely and manage the logistical challenges that are new, our product or our go-to-market strategy? Whatever it is, that's the top of the pyramid when you think about an organizational change plan. And then you move down and you simply ask yourself, okay, who do we need to communicate with, train, and teach? And how do we do that? And it might be that, like in my case in this nursing home, I'm not the one who needs to do the training or communicating or teaching. Others need to do that. Others who are closer, who have relationships. Who needs to do that? What do we need to know? What processes, what training is missing that has to be in place in order to correct whatever we need to correct? Then make sure that you've looked at what provides the foundation for that, which is listening and learning. In this case, thinking about an organizational change plan. And I can't emphasize this level enough. Who do we need to listen to and learn from? Who needs a voice in this process? Look around your organization and ask yourself, who is impacted by the change we're trying to make? Who would have a voice? Who has awareness that we need as part of this change planning committee or group that would change what we do, that would influence what we do? Knowing that if we have their voice, we're going to be seeing things and understanding things that are going to be critical to how we teach and communicate, to even thinking about what we need to change in the first place. And then we move down a level of the pyramid in order to build this plan. How could we strengthen our relationship with these people? What is our relationship like right now? Do we have a level of trust that would elicit the kind of things that we need to learn right now? Now, there's questions always about these levels of the pyramid, our relationship building levels. There's not something new that you have to do here. Just remember that every single interaction that you have with a person either builds or erodes your relationship. In every interaction you have, in chaos, moving from one thing to another, how you meet, what you meet about, what you don't meet about, what you share and what you don't share, builds your relationship. It's not something proactively that you need to do. Just remember that everything that I do is either eroding or strengthening my relationship. And then ask, what other stakeholders will influence those who are involved? In the case in the nursing home, it was all the other patients. How could we help all of these patients be on the lookout and help each other in a way that we've never enlisted before? In your organization, who are the stakeholders? Your customers are your stakeholders that are going to be influenced by whatever you figure out how to do in your organization. There might be others, the family members of our employees. How are they influenced by these decisions? How could we let them have a voice or be able to solicit the kind of feedback that they might provide? Ultimately, as we've learned in the pyramid in any application, my mindset matters most. Just ask the question, do we really understand the needs and challenges and objectives of every single person who's impacted? Do we really see them as people? Do they matter the way we matter? If you will walk through this set of questions, whatever that team looks like, who's trying to figure out how we pivot our strategic plan, trying to figure out how we enable cultural changes, how we get role clarity, how we work remotely, how we manage the logistics of our new team. If you will walk through these questions and answer them thoughtfully, carefully, you will build a game plan. Notice that when we're correcting, we're looking for the things that are going wrong, but the only way to affect change is to do everything below that level of the pyramid. It's not that we start at correction and if it works, great. It's that the only way we'll correct anything right now in chaos as if every level of the pyramid has been built in advance. Now, I want to just take a couple questions that have come in. One that has come in the course of this webinar. How do we bolster buy-in in our workforce in order to implement a new change plan? I want to be really careful here. I want you to think about your language, the language that you use in communicating anything around your change plan. We've used the term buy-in for a long time. It's kind of in the vernacular, and we all get what that means. Even though the person who asked this question understands that what we're really asking for is ownership and commitment and deep levels of accountability. We're wondering, how do we get people on board? But our language is important. When we ask people to buy in, or when we talk about getting buy-in, what the fundamental assumption there is that we're selling something. And if you're going to build an organizational change plan that will work, you cannot be selling anything. Everybody is already on the bus. The question is to figure out, how do we invite every single person to drive the bus from where they're at? So just be careful of your language. How do we build ownership? How do we build deep levels of accountability? How do we build awareness? How do we help every single person in this organization become attuned, alive in ways that they've never been before, to their impact on other people, to their impact on how we're pivoting, to the impact on the result? How do we help every single person become less focused on the tasks and how those tasks drive our ability to succeed together? Just think about that together. When we build an organizational game plan in this way, it's not top down, it's not bottom up, it's everybody working together, bringing the kinds of awareness that we need from every level of the organization. Now, what we're not saying is that we make decisions in a democracy. That doesn't work. We're not saying that everybody's opinion has to be weighed equally. What we're saying is that if you're going to build a game plan as an organization that invites every single person to own it, this is what is required. Remember, we've had a distinction in the way that we've thought about organizations for years. That's governed how we thought about organizations. It's governed how we thought about families. It's governed how we've thought about all sorts of institutions that have grown up around this assumption. And that is that there is a difference between the people who think and the people who do. And if you are going to weather this storm and thrive, you have to eliminate that distinction. There is no one on the team who wants to buy in to your vision, but there are people on your team who have a vision and may never have been invited to the table to share what that looks like, the kinds of things they could do within the sphere of their own influence to change radically the way we're operating together, to change how we're thinking about how we work remotely, to change how we think about this team, to change how we think about our strategic plan, even how we go to market. It was interesting, back in the technological revolution, we were working with a large multinational client who was delivering products that were cutting edge in tech. And this person said, we lost our very best people because we told them what to do at work, and then they used their brains in their garage at home to do the kinds of things they knew our customers wanted. All of that has to be invited in. And I promise you that if you look carefully at the people in your organization as people that matter the way you matter, you will find a way to invite them into this conversation. Find a way to enlist their innovation, their creativity, their capability. Every person in your organization is a person. And the invitation today, whether you begin your organizational change plan today or not, is remember that and find ways to enlist the very, very best of your people. I think we're out of time. Hope this has been helpful. If we can be helpful in any way, please reach out. We do have a strategic pivot planning session that we can offer to you. Sarah will talk more about that. We're standing by. We want to help you through this. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Mitch, thank you so much for this very engaging presentation. I hope all of you who have joined us today have been able to take something away that you can start using immediately, today even. Having a framework to work through right now as we deal with this chaos and this crisis is absolutely invaluable. As Mitch just mentioned, Arbinger, in response to that, Arbinger is offering a live facilitated workshop with virtual delivery called Leading in Crisis. And that's a specific version of our longer strategic planning workshop that's been tailored exactly for this moment. It's tailored for COVID-19 and the business crises that we're all facing right now. And because that is a live facilitated workshop delivered virtually, participants will be able to actually talk about their exact issues and get guidance and strategic planning advice, as well as just develop a stronger ability to pivot right now by working with one of Arbinger's master facilitators. Our next session is April 14th, and seating for these workshops is extremely limited. So we ask that anybody who's interested in learning more about this, please take a second in the Q&A right now, put your name and your email address. We'll reach out to you and try and get you into that session. So please, again, put your name and your email address in the Q&A. You can also reach out to us at info@arbinger.com for more information about that workshop. We also encourage you to follow Arbinger on LinkedIn, where you can find announcements about our upcoming presentations and new content and other things that we're putting out all the time. And feel free, please, we encourage you to connect with Mitch there as well. As I mentioned at the top of the hour, I have a very cool opportunity to talk to the presenter, in this case, Mitch, after this presentation and have a Q&A. We had a lot of questions pop up in the Q&A. Some we're able to get to, some we can't. Mitch took the most that he could in the limited time that we have, and we'll pull out some more of those questions and discuss them together. Those are recorded separately and then added to arbinger.com/webinars. So to have access to those sessions, to those questions and answer, please go to arbinger.com/webinars. You can request the recordings there. All of the recordings for our existing presentations that have happened in the last few weeks are already there, ready for you to request access to and listen to. They really are very engaging, and it's a great platform for really being able to dig in. Also, this presentation has been recorded. You can look for that email that you will get later today with a link to this recording, as well as information about our next presentation, which will be on Wednesday. We invite you to share that with your networks. You can forward the email, you can send them to arbinger.com/webinars, whatever way you'd like to share, we invite you to do that. I know that people have gotten a lot of value out of these presentations, and we hope that you will share that value if you found it helpful today, which I hope you have. Thank you again, Mitch, for being with us today. Please join us Wednesday, where we'll be hearing from Chip Huth on his presentation, Turning Chaos into Growth, Creating an Anti-Fragile Organization. I got to talk with Chip a little earlier this week about what he's planning for that session, and my mind is already blown. Chip is really an amazing guy. Some of you will know him as a character, I guess, a real person, but his story is in the Outward Mindset. You've also seen a lot of his videos in Arbinger trainings, or maybe you've come across him in one of his many speeches and presentations. A huge amount of respect for Chip, and really look forward to hearing from him on Wednesday. So we'll hope you'll join us for that. Again, thank you so much for being here today and taking the time out of your schedule to join in this presentation and to listen to Mitch. We appreciate having you and look forward to seeing you on Wednesday. Stay safe.